Pete Buttigieg loves God, beer, and his electric Mustang. Sure, the U.S. Secretary of Transportation has thoughts on building bridges, but infrastructure occupies just a sliver of his voluminous mind. That's apparently Wired magazine's biggest takeaway from interviewing the Secretary of Transportation in a piece published today and going viral.
Reporter Virginia Heffernan did not ask Buttigieg about East Palestine, Ohio, not once, doesn't appear in the document, or what he's doing to prevent train derailments, protections for airline customers, really anything specifically having to do with his actual job. Instead, the two of them discussed Tucker Carlson, impossible meat, conspiracy theories on the right, Buttigieg's belief in God, and, of course, January 6th. Can't forget that. Journalist Zaid Jilani reacted to the piece, quote, "Why did someone interview the Secretary of Transportation and ask almost no questions about transportation?" That's why this interview is going viral. I have to say it is one of the most, it's a Fawning, it's hagiography. It is so favorable to Buttigieg. It begins, "The curious mind of Pete Buttigieg holds much of its functionality in reserve." She describes him as a clockwork man, able to carry on conversation while solving a Rubik's Cube in one part of his mind and playing the piano and then doing masculine things like drinking beer, which I don't know if that's a masculine thing anymore, given all the woke Bud Light, Dylan Mulvaney takeover.
Sure. I thought we had these days behind us. This is how Buttigieg reared onto the scene with all of these articles that were written about how he was like the smartest boy that ever lived. This piece says, I slowly become aware that his cabinet job requires only a modest portion of his cognitive powers. Other mental facilities, no kidding, are apportioned to the Iliad, Puritan historiography, Nosgard Spring, though not in the original Norwegian, slacker. It's like the idea that this guy spoke a handful of languages, which came into dispute later on how actually fluent he was at them, and that he, took a classics course in college, were supposed to be a substitute for a real interview about his role in government. I think the only question specifically about running the Department of Transportation comes in this form. Quote, "Running DOT seems to suit you. Are there more ways the challenges of transportation speak to your spiritual side?"
Just wild.
So to be clear, there was not just the accident in East Palestine. There have been a number of train derailments that have now all been memory hold because they've been too many to count. Remember, he made that comment when asked to respond to the East Palestine disaster, saying, well, these things happen like 1,000 times a year, which he was torn apart for, rightly so. There was the huge airline crisis over the holidays where, millions of Americans were stranded and not able to get to their holiday travel, the most kind of massive grounding of planes in recent history, if not ever. No questions about that. It's a real dereliction of responsibility from a journalistic perspective, but you also have to ask why it is that someone would be elevating Buttigieg in this sort of a way.
I think transparently, this reads like, this man is so perfect. He's so smart. He can speak eloquently on every subject. He knows everything. Why shouldn't he be president? That's the subtext here.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's
this is it's an advertisement for Pete Buttigieg.
Mm-hmm. And articles like this are the only reason he is a thing to begin with. He was the mayor of a town,
the fourth largest town in the state of Indiana, right? Indiana?
Yeah. South Bend, this population is just over 100,000 people. There are buildings in China with more people in them than that. Seriously. And
they're still in there. They're not allowed to leave their homes. Stop.
But the national conversation, in magazine cover after magazine cover, I remember this in 2019, going to a doctor's office, or I guess a little bit before that, 2017, 2018, going to a friend's house, seeing the Washingtonian. Every magazine that you looked at would have Pete Buttigieg's face on the cover. And it really did create this weird social phenomenon where we were supposed to invest in his abilities in a way that was way outsized his actual performance. And now that he has a real job and a real administration, not to say that being the mayor of South Bend is a real job, but now that he has a more high-profile job with more responsibilities, he's quite literally failing at that job and still getting plaudits from the press.
I smell a nefarious plot by Big Magazine to have Pete Buttigieg and Stacey Abrams be the Democratic ticket.
Stacey Abrams.
All they want to do is sell covers.
It might be
that's what it's going to be.
It might be Stacey Plaskett these days, because I don't even see anybody really talking about Stacey Abrams that much anymore.
She's fallen off the radar.
After all of the voting rights lawsuits ended, not in her interest, they failed. The voter suppression lawsuits, rather. And after the expose about her having funneled so much money to her friend's law firm in order to litigate those unsuccessful lawsuits, it seems like even the Democratic Party has put some distance between themselves and her. Or maybe she's just stepped away from the public eye for a while to get her own life in order. What is clear is that the same isn't true of Pete Buttigieg, who's very much rearing to go. Former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner commented on Wired's post on Buttigieg and said the following: "With a remarkable blend of intellect and empathy, Pete Buttigieg brings a fresh perspective to the forefront of the public discourse." That's from the article, of course. Turner responded, "Was there empathy for East Palestine residents?" I think that's a very fair question, one that the author of this piece declined to ask.
Yeah, it's getting just torn apart on Twitter. I'm scrolling through the... Sagar Enjeti, a former host of this show, Breaking Point, says he's like a Big Bang Theory character, a dumb person's idea of what a smart person should look like.
That's
actually smart and competent people are laughing at him.
I think that's right. And the article, by the way, it touches on these aspects of his... Go ahead.
Charles C.W. Cook of National Review. Inspired by Virginia Heffernan's journalism, I sat down with Pete Buttigieg to discuss barges, Latin poetry, my enduring love for his cathedral of a mind, a love that makes breath poor and speech unable.
It's pathetic.
He wrote a whole article.
I had an airline industry expert on my show a few months ago, and one of the things that he pointed out was that there's so much that Buttigieg has exclusive ability to control in his position at DOT, that is exclusively in his province. So it's not one of those things where, he can't do X, Y, and Z because Congress isn't with him, or he has to pass this bill and Republicans are going to block it. Pete Buttigieg could literally be making consumers' lives better in some really meaningful industries. In an election season, it is declining to do so and getting patted on the back for it.
I'm sorry. I'm just reading this Charles C.W. Cook. This is a parody. This is a National Review conservative writer doing a parody of this piece. It is so funny. The man's mind is a cathedral, and I, a mere congregant, have been invited into its inner sanctum. In between the seductive sips of, I can't even pronounce this, I assume this is a fancy Chardonnay, atop which he builds his heady pedagogical flights, Pete Buttigieg leans back into his pulchritudinous chair and takes me through the history of the Asian subcontinent. I am sitting in the great man's office in the heart of Washington, D.C., stealing a few moments of his valuable time. I was early and he was late, but that was to be expected. Some people require their own rules.
Yeah, this feels very Obama era, where liberals felt like if they just...
It goes on and on again. Read it.
Got enough people with Harvard degrees who are over 6 foot tall with enough identity,
How tall
diversity.
is Pete Buttigieg? Is he tall?
I don't think he's especially tall. I think he's like...
What's his sign?
5'10".
What are we? We're all interested in that. Everybody involved in this show, except for me, always wants to know everybody's sign. And there's a lot of, you're a Leo. That means X, Y, Z.
You know what it means, especially as a Leo.
I do know what it
Leo
means,
man.
having listened to you and our producers talk about it.
One other thing for the leftists who have been cultivating a distrust of Pete Buttigieg we're getting word that he's a Capricorn.
I don't know what that means.
They're diligent. They're hardworking. They're a little. Well, I don't want to. I had no one love a lot of Capricorns, but they can be a little bit rigid, flat. They can be kind of mean, actually. If they're on your side, the meanness feels like support. But when they're not on your side, they're some of the meanest people that I know. I will say that.
Interesting. But you were saying about the left.
Yeah, the left has been cultivating a frustration with Pete Buttigieg for a really long time, precisely because he does this cosplaying as being an actual leftist. This article sings praises of his father being a notable Marxist professor, as though any of that made it over to Pete Buttigieg. It talks about how Pete Buttigieg used to love Bernie Sanders, and all of this feels like a shorthand for come on, left, you should really like this guy, but the left isn't stupid. One of the things that is laundering is it asks him specifically about neoliberalism as a principle, which is, again, evidence of how weirdly kind of out of touch the focus of this. Nobody speaks in those kind of terms unless you're an academic or very deep on the online left having conversations about how Hillary Clinton is a neoliberal shill, right? But she asks him a question about neoliberalism, and she defines it as The happy idea that consumer markets and liberal democracy will always expand and will always expand together. Now, I'm very much on the online left, and I travel in academic circles. I have never heard it defined in that way, as a patently good thing, that everything is going to get better, and the markets and social democracy and everything is going to be, why wouldn't anybody be against neoliberalism? Neoliberalism usually defines a system of austerity, price controls, deregulation, a lot of the things that people in the populist left and right have been criticizing for years, that has devastated Midwestern towns like the ones Pete Buttigieg is from. And so this papering over of it as a philosophy, as an economic approach, and not interrogating why it is that Pete Buttigieg actually supports specifically and explicitly neoliberalism, it's just more evidence of the whitewashing that this particular article does. It's a mess.
We encourage you to read it. Very enjoyable. Tomorrow on Rising, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of our content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're available anywhere there are podcasts. And we hope you have had a good week. We've had a good week.
We've had a good week.
I can finally get back to
Legends of Zelda.
Legend of Zelda. I'll have my review next week, I promise. I've even threatened to bring the game into the studio.
Hey, I'll play. I like a video game. I have an older brother. I know how to get down.
We know you're clamoring for it. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.